Before the noise of the world begins, before worries try to take over your heart, take this quiet moment and breathe. This is your sacred time with God. A moment where you don't have to rush, perform, or pretend, just be still in His presence. Right now, wherever you are, God is near, listening and ready to fill your heart with peace. This morning is a fresh gift. Yesterday's burdens do not have to follow you into today. God's mercy is new, His strength is available, and His guidance is already prepared for the steps you will take. When you begin your day with Him, you begin it anchored, protected, and covered by His grace. As you settle your heart, let every anxious thought fade away. You are not alone in what you're facing. God sees you, understands you, and walks ahead of you. In this quiet moment, He offers calm for your mind, strength for your soul, and direction for your path. So stay here, slow down, and open your heart. This is not just a prayer, it is a divine appointment. A peaceful morning with God can change the atmosphere of your entire day. Entering God's presence in quietness begins with a deliberate choice to slow down, to step away from the rush of thoughts, responsibilities, and inner noise that so often fill the mind. Quietness is not merely the absence of sound, it's the posture of the heart that says, God, I am here and I am listening. In this stillness, we acknowledge that before we do anything else, before we speak to anyone else, before we face the demands of the day, our first attention belongs to God. This moment of quiet is an act of surrender, a gentle laying down of our own control so that we can become aware of His presence that has been with us all along. When we enter God's presence in quietness, we are not trying to impress Him with words or effort. We are simply allowing ourselves to be fully present with Him. Many people feel pressure to pray perfectly, to find the right words, or to follow a certain structure, but quietness removes that burden. It teaches us that God is not moved by the length of our prayers, but by the openness of our hearts. In the silence, we come just as we are, tired, hopeful, anxious, grateful, and we trust that God understands every unspoken thought. This kind of quiet requires intention because the mind naturally wants to wander. Thoughts about the past, worries about the future, and distractions of the present all try to pull us away. Entering God's presence means gently redirecting our focus back to Him each time our thoughts drift. There is no frustration in this process, only patience. Every time we return our attention to God, we are practicing trust and dependence, reminding ourselves that He is worthy of our focus and that nothing else is more urgent than being with Him. Quietness also humbles us. It reminds us that we are not the source of our own strength, wisdom, or peace. By being still before God, we admit that we need Him. We recognize that without His guidance, our decisions can become heavy and unclear, and without His peace, our hearts can become restless. This humility opens the door for God to work within us, because a quiet heart is a receptive heart, ready to receive what God wants to give. In this quiet presence, we become more aware of God's nearness. Often we imagine that God speaks only in dramatic moments, but many times He speaks in gentle impressions, soft nudges, and quiet reassurance. When we slow down enough to listen, we begin to notice His peace settling over us, calming our thoughts and steadying our emotions. This awareness does not always come with words. Sometimes it comes as a deep sense of comfort, a feeling of being held and understood beyond explanation. Entering God's presence in quietness also allows healing to begin. When we stop running and sit with God, hidden fears and unprocessed emotions may surface. This can feel uncomfortable, but it is a necessary part of spiritual growth. God's presence is a safe place where we can bring every burden without fear of judgment. In the quiet, we give Him permission to touch the places in our hearts that we often ignore, and in doing so, we experience His gentle restoration. Quietness teaches us to trust God's timing. In a world that values speed and instant results, being still before God feels countercultural. Yet this stillness reminds us that God is not rushed, and that His plans unfold perfectly in His time. As we sit quietly with Him, we learn to release the need to control outcomes, and instead, rest in the assurance that God is already at work, even when we cannot see immediate change. This practice of entering God's presence in quietness also shapes how we carry ourselves throughout the day. When we begin our morning this way, we carry a sense of calm into every interaction and decision. The quiet time becomes an anchor, reminding us, no matter what happens, we have already met with God. This awareness helps us respond rather than react, listen rather than rush, and trust rather than worry. Over time, quietness deepens our relationship with God. It shifts our faith from something we only express in words to something we experience in stillness. We begin to recognize His presence not only in our prayer time, but also in ordinary moments, because our hearts have been trained to notice Him. The more we practice entering His presence in quietness, the more natural it becomes to turn to Him throughout the day. In this quiet place, our hearts are softened, our minds are renewed, and our spirits are aligned with God's truth. We are reminded that we do not walk into the day alone, but accompanied by a God who knows every step we will take. Quietness becomes the doorway through which we move from anxiety to peace, from self-reliance to trust, and from distraction to divine awareness, allowing God's presence to shape the foundation of our day and gently guide the rhythm of our lives. Worry often enters our lives quietly, slipping into the mind before we even realize it has taken control. It shows up as racing thoughts early in the morning, as questions about the future that have no immediate answers, as memories of past mistakes that refuse to stay buried, and as fears about responsibilities waiting for us in the day ahead. Inner noise is not always loud, but it is constant, and it drains peace before the day even begins. Releasing worries is not about pretending problems do not exist. It is about choosing not to let those problems dominate the heart. When we come before God in the quiet of the morning, we are invited to lay down everything that feels heavy, everything that keeps the mind restless, and everything that steals joy before it has a chance to grow. Many people carry worries as if they are a form of control, believing that if they think about problems enough, they can prevent pain or failure. But worry does not protect the heart. It exhausts it. It creates inner noise that blocks clarity, prayer, and trust. Releasing worry begins with honesty before God, acknowledging that we are tired of carrying burdens we were never meant to hold alone. In stillness, we learn that God is not intimidated by our fears or disappointed by our doubts. He welcomes them because surrender is the doorway to peace. The act of releasing worries is an act of faith, a decision to say that God's care is greater than our understanding and His plan is steadier than our emotions. Inner noise often comes from too many voices competing for attention. The voice of fear says something will go wrong. The voice of comparison says others are doing better. The voice of regret says the past cannot be undone. The voice of pressure says there is no time to rest. These voices grow louder when the soul is tired, but they begin to fade when we intentionally turn our attention toward God. In quiet prayer, we give ourselves permission to stop replaying scenarios, stop predicting outcomes, and stop reliving pain. Silence before God is not empty, it is healing. It creates space for the heart to breathe and for truth to replace confusion. Releasing worries also means accepting that some answers will not come immediately. Much of inner noise is created by the need for instant clarity, yet faith teaches patience. God often calms the heart before He changes the situation. When we surrender worries, we are not demanding solutions, we are trusting God's timing. This trust softens the mind and allows peace to settle where anxiety once lived. The heart begins to understand that even without knowing every detail, it is safe in God's presence. The morning is a powerful time to release worries because it sets the direction for the entire day. What we carry in the morning often shapes our reactions, decisions, and emotions. If the day begins with anxiety, everything feels heavier. But when the day begins with surrender, challenges lose some of their power. Releasing worries early is like clearing a cloudy sky before the sun rises fully. It does not mean the day will be perfect, but it means the heart will be prepared. God's peace becomes a shield, guarding the mind against stress that tries to return. Inner noise can also come from self-criticism and unrealistic expectations. Many people wake up already feeling behind, already judging themselves for what they did not do yesterday or what they fear they cannot do today. Releasing worry includes releasing the need to be perfect. God does not ask for flawless performance, He asks for a willing heart. When we let go of harsh self-judgment, the soul becomes lighter. We begin to see ourselves through God's grace rather than through pressure, and that shift quiets the mind in a powerful way. Prayer plays a vital role in releasing worries because it transforms focus. Instead of focusing on problems, prayer turns attention toward God's character. His faithfulness in the past becomes a reminder that He will not abandon us now. His strength becomes reassurance when we feel weak. His wisdom becomes comfort when decisions feel overwhelming. As focus changes, inner noise loses its grip. Peace grows not because problems disappear, but because trust increases. There is also freedom in understanding that worry does not define responsibility. Caring deeply does not require constant anxiety. Releasing worry is not carelessness. It is confidence that God is actively involved in every detail of life. When we entrust concerns to Him, we are choosing partnership over panic. This choice may need to be made repeatedly because worries often try to return, but each time we release them, the heart grows stronger in faith. As worries are released, the soul begins to notice subtle changes. Breathing becomes slower, thoughts become clearer, emotions feel less overwhelming, the heart becomes more receptive to guidance and direction. Inner noise fades, making room for peace that does not depend on circumstances. This peace is not fragile, it is steady and grounding. It allows a person to move through the day with calm confidence, knowing that whatever comes, they are not facing it alone. And in that quiet trust, the heart continues to rest, allowing God's presence to shape thoughts, emotions, and responses as the day unfolds, without rushing, resisting, or holding on to the weight that once crowded the soul and filled every moment with tension and uncertainty that now slowly loosens its grip as faith deepens and the mind learns to remain still in the assurance of God's care and unfailing presence. God's peace is not the absence of trouble. It is the presence of His assurance in the middle of it. When you receive God's peace, something deeper than circumstances begins to settle inside you. The mind that was racing starts to slow down. The heart that felt heavy begins to breathe again, and the soul that felt restless finds a quiet peace to rest. This peace does not come from understanding everything that is happening around you, but from trusting the one who holds everything together. It is a peace that flows gently, like calm water, washing over fears, doubts, and unanswered questions without needing permission from logic or explanation. Many people search for peace by trying to control outcomes, fix every problem, or silence every negative thought. But God's peace works in a completely different way. It enters when you let go. When you stop fighting the weight of tomorrow and release it into God's hands, peace begins to grow. It reminds you that you are not responsible for carrying the entire world on your shoulders. God never asked you to figure everything out alone. His peace reassures you that even when you don't see the full picture, He does, and that knowledge alone is enough to calm the anxious heart. Receiving God's peace also means allowing Him to quiet the inner noise. There are voices that speak failure, and insecurity, replaying past mistakes and magnifying future worries. God's peace gently interrupts those voices. It does not shout over them, it replaces them. It speaks softly but firmly, reminding you that you are seen, loved, and protected. As that peace settles in, the chaos inside loses its power. Thoughts become clearer, emotions become steadier, and decisions are no longer driven by panic but by trust. This peace has a healing quality to it. Emotional wounds that have been reopened by stress and disappointment begin to close. The tightness in your chest eases, the tension in your body relaxes, and the exhaustion that comes from constant worry starts to lift. God's peace restores what anxiety has drained. It renews strength not by adding more effort, but by removing the burden of fear. In His peace you realize that rest is not weakness. It is a form of faith, a declaration that God is in control even when you choose to stop striving. When you receive God's peace, your perspective changes. Problems that once felt overwhelming begin to look smaller, not because they disappear, but because you are no longer facing them alone. Peace shifts your focus from the size of the challenge to the greatness of God. It helps you respond rather than react, to listen rather than rush, to wait rather than worry. With peace in your heart, patience grows and clarity replaces confusion. You begin to sense God's presence guiding you step by step, moment by moment. God's peace also guards the heart. It acts like a shield against negativity, protecting your emotions from being easily shaken by words, situations, or setbacks. When peace is present, you don't fall apart at every disappointment. You feel the pain, but it doesn't consume you. You acknowledge the struggle, but it doesn't define you. Peace keeps you grounded, reminding you of who God is and who you are in Him. It allows you to stand firm even when the ground beneath you feels uncertain. This peace is deeply connected to trust. The more you trust God, the more freely His peace flows. Trust opens the door for peace to enter areas where fear once lived. It reaches into relationships, work, finances, and personal struggles, bringing a calm assurance that God is working behind the scenes. Even in silence, peace whispers that God has not forgotten you. Even in waiting, peace confirms that delay does not mean denial. It teaches you to rest in God's timing instead of resisting it. Receiving God's peace does not mean you will never feel anxious again, but it means anxiety no longer controls you. Peace gives you the ability to pause, pray, and realign your heart with God whenever fear tries to return. It becomes a steady anchor, pulling you back to calm waters when emotional storms arise. Over time, you begin to recognize peace as a sign of God's nearness, a gentle reminder that He is walking with you through every season. As God's peace fills your heart, it begins to flow outward. Your words become softer, your reactions more thoughtful, and your presence more comforting to others. People may not know what you are carrying or what you have been through, but they will sense something different about you. Peace becomes a testimony without needing explanation. It reflects a life rooted in God, shaped by trust and sustained by grace, creating space in your soul where faith grows stronger, hope feels lighter, and the heart learns to remain calm even when life feels uncertain. Strength for the day ahead does not come from how much sleep you had, how motivated you feel, or how confident you are in your own abilities. It comes from the quiet exchange that happens when you place your weakness into God's hands and allow His power to flow into you. In the stillness of the morning, before demands pull at your attention, God invites you to receive strength that is deeper than physical energy, strength that reaches your thoughts, emotions, and spirit. This is the kind of strength that steadies your heart when unexpected challenges arise, that keeps you gentle when frustration tries to harden you, and that allows you to keep moving forward even when answers are not yet clear. When you pause before God, you acknowledge that you cannot carry the weight of the day alone, and that acknowledgement itself opens the door for divine strength to take its place where anxiety once lived. God's strength does not rush you, it settles you. It reminds you that you do not need to have everything figured out right now, because the one who holds the day already knows what lies ahead. As you sit quietly with Him, His strength becomes like an inner anchor, keeping you grounded no matter how busy or uncertain the hours become. This strength gives you patience in conversations, wisdom in decisions, and endurance when tasks feel overwhelming. It teaches you to respond instead of react, to trust instead of panic, and to move with purpose instead of pressure. When God strengthens you, He does not remove every challenge, but He reshapes how you face them, filling you with courage that does not depend on circumstances. His strength helps you carry responsibilities without feeling crushed by them, and it gives you the grace to handle delays, disappointments, and detours with a steady heart. In the quiet morning, as you draw near to God, He renews your inner strength in ways you may not immediately feel but will clearly recognize as the day unfolds. You begin to notice that situations which once drained you no longer have the same power, that words which once wounded you no longer control your peace, and that fears which once dominated your thoughts begin to lose their grip. This strength is gentle yet unshakable, calm yet resilient, steady yet alive, and it flows from knowing that you are not walking alone. God's strength reminds you that even if today brings heavy moments, you are supported by hands stronger than your own, and even if you feel small, His power is more than enough to carry you through every moment, every decision, every step. As you move forward, trusting that He is working within you, guiding you, sustaining you, and holding you steady as the day continues to unfold before you. Trusting God's guidance means choosing to believe that He knows the way even when you do not. In the quiet moments of the morning, when the day has not yet demanded your attention, your heart is most open to direction from above. This trust begins with surrender, a gentle decision to place your plans, questions, and uncertainties into God's hands. It is acknowledging that human understanding is limited, but God's wisdom is complete, seeing the end from the beginning. When you trust His guidance, you are not saying you have no fears, you are saying that your faith is greater than your fears. So often, people rush into decisions driven by pressure, emotion, or urgency. Trusting God's guidance invites you to slow down and listen. It teaches you that direction does not always come as a loud answer or a sudden sign. Sometimes it comes as a quiet peace in your spirit, a sense of assurance that gently settles your heart. God guides not only through clear instructions, but also through calm confidence, closing some doors while opening others, shaping your path even when you are unaware of it. Trust grows when you remember how God has guided you before. There were moments when you did not know how things would work out, yet somehow you were carried through. Looking back, you can see His hand protecting you from what you did not see and leading you toward what you needed. Trusting God's guidance in the present becomes easier when you reflect on His faithfulness in the past. Each memory becomes a reminder that He has never failed you, even when the road was unclear. Trusting God's guidance also requires humility. It means accepting that your own plans may not always be the best ones. Sometimes what you desire feels right, but God sees consequences you can. OTC. His guidance may redirect you, delay you, or ask you to wait. Waiting can feel uncomfortable, but it is often in the waiting that God prepares your heart and strengthens your character. Trusting Him during these seasons is an act of deep faith, believing that His timing is just as important as His direction. In a world full of opinions and voices, trusting God's guidance helps you filter what truly matters. Not every opportunity is meant for you, and not every good idea is a God idea. When you learn to seek God first, His guidance brings clarity. It aligns your desires with His will, shaping your decisions so they reflect purpose rather than impulse. This kind of trust protects you from unnecessary regret and brings peace even when the path requires sacrifice. Trusting God's guidance does not mean you will never face confusion or difficulty. It means that even in uncertainty, you choose to rely on Him. There will be days when the way forward feels hidden, when prayers seem unanswered, and when clarity does not come immediately. In those moments, trust becomes a daily choice. You wake up and say, even without understanding, I believe God is leading me. That choice strengthens your faith and keeps your heart anchored. God's guidance often works through small steps rather than dramatic changes. Trusting Him means being faithful in the little things, making honest decisions, choosing kindness, and walking in obedience, even when no one is watching. Over time, these small acts of trust shape your journey. You may not see instant results, but God is weaving every step into a greater plan that serves your growth and His glory. Trusting God's guidance also brings rest to your soul. When you stop carrying the burden of figuring everything out on you, your heart becomes lighter. You realize that you are not meant to control every outcome. God invites you to walk with Him, not ahead of Him. His guidance brings reassurance that you are not alone, that every step is seen, and that nothing in your life is wasted. In the quiet of the morning, trusting God's guidance sets the tone for the entire day. Instead of reacting to circumstances, you respond with faith. Instead of being driven by anxiety, you move with purpose. You begin to see challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities for God to lead you deeper into trust. Each moment becomes a chance to say, Lord, guide my thoughts, my words, and my actions today. As trust deepens, fear loses its grip. You no longer feel the need to have all the answers before moving forward. You learn to walk step by step, confident that God will reveal what you need when you need it. This kind of trust transforms your relationship with God from one of occasional prayer to continual dependence. It becomes a lifestyle of listening, following, and believing. Trusting God's guidance does not remove responsibility, it gives it meaning. You still plan, work, and make decisions, but you do so with prayer and humility. You invite God into every part of your life, big and small. Over time, you begin to recognize His voice more clearly, not because life becomes easier, but because your heart becomes more attentive. When you trust God's guidance, your life becomes a testimony of faith in action. Others may not understand your choices, but you carry a quiet confidence within you. You know you are walking a path shaped by divine wisdom, not human pressure. That confidence brings courage, allowing you to move forward, even when the future feels uncertain, knowing that God goes before you, walks beside you, and gently leads you onward, step by step, into what He has already prepared for you, even when the destination is still unfolding, beginning the day covered. In grace means waking up. Why? The awareness that you are not stepping into life by your own strength, wisdom, or perfection, but under the loving favor and mercy of God. Grace is God's unearned kindness that meets you before you even ask for it. When you begin your morning covered in grace, you are choosing to trust that God has already gone ahead of you, smoothing the path, guarding your steps, and surrounding you with His protection. This understanding changes how you face the day, because instead of striving to prove yourself, you rest in the assurance that God's hand is already upon you. Grace lifts the heavy burden of performance from your shoulders. So many people start their day feeling pressured by expectations, responsibilities, and the fear of making mistakes. But grace reminds you that God does not love you because of how well you perform. He loves you because you are His. When you accept this truth in the morning, it frees your heart from anxiety and self-condemnation. You are no longer driven by fear of failure, but guided by confidence in God's goodness. Grace allows you to move forward with humility and peace, knowing that even if you stumble, God's mercy will catch you. To begin the day covered in grace is to acknowledge your need for God. It is an act of surrender that says, Lord, I cannot do this alone, and I don't have to. Grace fills the gap between your weakness and God's strength. When challenges arise, grace becomes the quiet assurance that you are not facing them alone. It becomes the unseen shield that protects your mind from discouragement and your heart from despair. You may not know what the day will bring, but grace assures you that whatever comes, God will be present within it. Grace also shapes the way you respond to others. When you start your day under God's grace, you are more patient, more forgiving, and more compassionate. You realize that just as God extends mercy to you, you are called to extend that same mercy to others. Grace softens your reactions and slows your anger. It reminds you that people are imperfect, just like you, and that love is more powerful than judgment. A heart grounded in grace carries peace into every interaction, turning ordinary moments into opportunities to reflect God's character. Beginning the day covered in grace helps you release control. Many struggles come from the desire to manage everything, to predict outcomes, and to protect ourselves from disappointment. Grace invites you to let go and trust God with what you cannot control. It teaches you to rest in God's promises instead of worrying about uncertainties. When you trust that God's grace is sufficient, you stop chasing perfection and start walking in faith. You become more open to God's leading even when it takes you beyond your comfort zone. Grace renews your perspective. Instead of seeing obstacles as threats, you begin to see them as opportunities for God to work. You understand that grace is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of God within it. Every challenge becomes a chance to witness God's faithfulness and strength at work in your life. This shift in perspective fills your heart with hope, because you know that nothing is wasted in God's hands. Even the hardest moments can be used for growth, healing, and transformation. When you begin the day covered in grace, your identity becomes rooted in who God says you are, not in what the world demands of you. Grace reminds you that you are chosen, loved, and accepted. This truth anchors your soul and protects you from the lies of comparison and insecurity. You no longer measure your worth by success or approval, but by God's unwavering love. This confidence allows you to walk through the day with quiet strength and steady faith, even when circumstances try to shake you. Grace also brings rest to your soul. It quiets the inner voice that says you are not enough, and replaces it with God's truth, that His grace is sufficient. When your heart is at rest, your mind becomes clearer, and your spirit more sensitive to God's guidance. You begin to notice His gentle direction in small moments, guiding your decisions and shaping your steps. Grace keeps you aligned with God's will, helping you move forward with wisdom rather than haste. Starting the day covered in grace is a daily choice. It requires intentional surrender and trust. Each morning you choose to place your life in God's hands, believing that His grace will carry you through whatever lies ahead. This choice transforms the ordinary into the sacred and fills your day with purpose and meaning. Grace becomes the foundation upon which your faith stands, supporting you in moments of strength and sustaining you in moments of weakness. As you walk through the day under God's grace, your heart remains anchored in peace, your spirit strengthened by hope, and your path guided by His unfailing love.